We are gold and blue, born in 1872, the greatest team in the world. We are known as we follow on. We are the people through and through, the gold and blue since.
Did you hear the intro there?
Aye.
That's good morning, all. My apologies. Thanks for joining Bold and Blue 1872. My name is Chris, and I am again joined by Jack. Sorry, a little bit of a technical problem there, but good morning, Jack. How's things?
Good morning, Chris. Yeah, technical issues aside, it seems shaping up to be a rather more positive Monday for a change.
Yeah, do you know what it is? I think it's my headset here. Give me 2 secs, Jack. Get the big ones on. That's much better. Yeah, sorry, technical difficulties. My apologies again. So yeah, great news last night. Let's start with that. You know, I was laughing with Jack there all just before I came on. I posted a video last night where I was clearly pretty seething, I was not expecting the news to come as soon as it was last night, despite all the rumours that were circulating. But yeah, Russell Martin has been removed from his position as Rangers manager, effective from last night. The club announced around about 9:30 last night. There was an official statement released by the club. So Russell Martin leaves us after a 122-day reign, officially the shortest reign of any permanent manager that has ever been taken the helm at Rangers. And he leaves us after 17 games, 5 wins, 6 draws, 6 losses, an appalling record, around about a 29% win record. There's a lot being spoken about Beale's record, etc. I don't even think that we should be comparing his record to anyone, because it's in a league of its own, unfortunately. So yeah, I don't know. What did you make of the news last night, Jack?
Well, I want to say wasn't surprised by it, but at the same time, I think I was, in terms of how quickly it moved, because you know the support in general have been asking for this for weeks, you know, and then I genuinely thought, you know, it's almost like a continued stay of execution for Russell Martin. So the fact that it came out so quickly was surprising in that sense, but I mean, no surprise overall. You talk about the statistics; it's like a 29.4% win, you know, percentage. It is just in a league of its own, and yeah, I just I can't believe it's actually taken as long as it has. So I am thankful from that perspective that at least we can close the chapter on Russell Martin, at least.
Yeah, listen, we're sitting 8th in the league. You know, 4 points off of the relegation zone. What are we now? 11 points off of Hearts as well now. You know, we're third bottom in the Europa League with no points. It's pretty damning, and you're right. I mean, the fact that it's even 122-day reign, and it's probably about 60 days too long. That kind of speaks volumes, and that, you know, it's as I said last night, I expected the news to come today, because it was, you know, the scenes after the match last night. You know, there's a lot of people, and I absolutely do not want this to be in any way, shape, or form this to be me condoning that kind of behaviour, where it looked as if there was some quite threatening behaviour going on last night, and there was quite a strong police presence. And you know, we now probably recognise that Martin was taken away in a separate car, not just because of for his own safety, but because the decision was probably made at the Falkirk ground. But that I can understand why the fans are so upset, because it did feel as if they just weren't listening to us, and it was just something that was clearly staring them in the face and obvious that a change needed to be made. So a lot's been said about Martin's safety was potentially getting to a point where it was in jeopardy. So like I said, not condoning that in any way, shape, or form, but for his own interests, it was probably the best decision in his interests as well.
Yeah, just touching on that, the what happened kind of after the game, like you said, there's no condoning of anything kind of towards Russell Martin in a sense, but like the club almost had a duty of care to him at that point, in terms of like he's having to be escorted, police escort out of the stadium, was just, but the frustration has built up so long that people were reaching new levels of frustration, and as you said, no one was listening. Just touching on it's almost that idea that Davy Weir had said during the coverage of the game that Rangers it's not a development club, and I think the perception from a lot of fans is that's how it's being treated at the minute. First and foremost, it's about winning. It's about having some nice shiny things to lift throughout the season, particularly that big one at the end of the season. And yes, develop players alongside it. We talk about the player trading, which we hear about all the time, but first and foremost is about winning. That just leads to some slightly bizarre comments from Russell Martin, which was obviously his final post-match interview around that. It's not here about just winning, but you have to win with a certain style, which just it's so odd from what Rangers kind of culturally and as a support is used to.
Yeah, well, he's gone. I am delighted. I don't want maybe that's not coming across as strong as it should be, but there is. I don't think there's any fan any fan that has the best interests of Rangers in their heart. Then I don't think there's anyone that is upset today that Martin has moved on. So he has gone, and we move on. The question is there bigger issues at the club? That is for me. I mean, obviously the question in everyone's mind is who is the next manager, but to get to that point, we need to have the right people in place to make that decision. And I think I've been fairly vocal of my concerns about Farewell in particular. I think there's a lot of concerns about Stewart that many fans share. And do we have the right people at the helm making these decisions to get the right man in next? I'm not overly confident that's the case. Should they be looking at potentially bringing in an advisor that understands the club more? Do they understand the club? I don't know what the answer is. But before we even get to the manager, what's your take on those guys that are making that decision for us?
So for me, I kind of want to take the two of them slightly separately, which I know sounds a bit bizarre, but Patrick Stewart, we'll go with him. So, he was back in Philippe Clement previously. Then there was the Queen's Park result, and then that eventually is what got rid of Philippe Clement. So it's like he almost went back on what he said, and it was like a bit bizarre, the whole scenario. Now he's obviously been involved heavily in the process with Russell Martin in terms of, identifying and hiring, etc., this rigorous interview process. And then a lot of the messages were, this takes time, we're back in the manager, etc. And then they have to sack him anyway. So it's a bit bizarre. I mean, he's essentially got quite a few decisions wrong already. Not to mention, he's taking umbrage with like sections of the support, etc. So he is on a very, very sugary peg, shall we say. Kevin Thelwell, he does not, get away without having any responsibility either, because he also was in conjunction in terms of identifying the manager, the process, feeding into the overall recruitment, etc. I do wonder if there is an element of that's, I don't want to say his first strike, but he's made that mistake, and for him it's probably about how does he learn from it. However, there's also all the other optics of, we spoke about previously, hiring his son for the head of recruitment role. A lot of, people previously worked with at Everton being offered jobs. So the optics around him also don't look great, and very much if he wants to continue as part of, you know, the supporting structure at the club, he really needs to get the next one right. Overall, I'm still not fairly confident in the ability of either of the kind of senior people there to get that appointment right. And I think someone in an advisory capacity, even if it's not necessarily about the football inside, but it's more about the club. Like, do they understand what the club is, what fans expect? And I think they really need to pay more respect to the culture of the club and not change it so dramatically.
Yeah. I think that, I mean, this will be Patrick Stewart's fourth manager. You know, he's what's he been here now? I mean, is it even been 9 months? Is it, you know, was it just at the tail end of last year that he was put in place, or was it just at the start of the year? I can't really remember. Someone can correct me on that. But so he's overseen PC losing his job, like you said, only weeks after saying that his job was safe, that he pulls the trigger there, brings Barry Ferguson in. I know it was an interim appointment, but Barry didn't do great in my opinion. And then he brings in Russell Martin, or he's overseen. He's been part of the equation in bringing in Russell Martin. So he's got a lot to answer to at this point. And then I mean, I've covered Farewell to death, so I'm not going to repeat myself. But it's not just this appointment of Martin that's where the question marks are. There's a lot of other question marks. So they need to get this right. They can absolutely not afford. I mean, in my opinion, their jobs are on the line as much as the next managers as if they get this appointment wrong. So we'll see. And in terms of do I think that they could probably do with bringing people in? I mean, there's always. You always hear fans talking about there should be more Rangers men around the club and all this kind of stuff, and I don't know what the answer is, but I do think that there's a glaring gap from what the club is and what it looks like people like Felwell and Stewart have perceived the club to be. So I mean, it can't. I'm sure it wouldn't be a bad thing just to have some people around. Whether or not they'll listen to them is another question. But you know, you hear the usual names being touted. I mean, Graham Souness could come back as an advisor and all this kind of stuff. I mean, I don't know what the answer is, but I do have some concerns. But yeah, fundamentally, they have to get this next one right. And I don't know if it means that they appoint an interim manager for a period of time, because they are quite famous at this point for having a lot of interviews, aren't they? Hopefully that's not going to be the case this time. But yeah, you know, if it's an interim manager, even that appointment is going to come under some fairly heavy scrutiny. So yeah, even that appointment, they're going to have to get that spot on as well.
Yeah, just on the famous infamous interview process. I mean, maybe they should try something different. You know, put all the names in a hat and pick one out. You know, because it's not worked for them so far. But on a serious note, yeah, they really do have to get it right, because if it goes wrong again, that level of fan anger, frustration is just going to turn on them straight away, and probably amplified more. You know, because for so long it was aimed at Russell Martin, and you know that he was taking the majority of that heat, and then it started to turn. We've seen obviously there was the confrontation between Thelwell and Stewart, and which would be the hotel after the European game, but it just they really need to get it right.
Yeah. Right. Well, I mean, time will tell. But before we go on to the next manager, like, how big a job is this? I believe a lot of those players that are at the club right now I think Martin had a major part in a number of them being signed. Now, was Felwell? I mean, was Martin recruited by Felwell to play towards a club philosophy, and therefore they've signed those players towards a club philosophy? And does that philosophy still exist? I don't know what the answer is there, but if it doesn't exist, then it's a new manager that comes in and they go with the new manager's approach. It would be safe to assume that he probably wants his own players, and even if they don't have that opportunity, was the recruitment strong enough that's been done in the summer, regardless of who the manager is? Do we have the right players? I mean, how big a job is this?
I mean, the job, I see it personally, is massive, not only in terms of, you've got an expecting fan base, which we are, that historically that's been the way at Rangers. You win things, you win games, which wasn't maybe understood, which it should have been from Russell Martin. He had played here, albeit it was a short, ill-fated spell, shall we say. But the recruitment, are the players good enough? I think a lot of people have said, well, are they good enough? Some people are saying that, there is talented players in there. We just don't know on the basis of how everything's, been. But the other worry for me is, as well, as you get a manager who comes in and says, none of this suits how I want to play, or these players aren't for me, and a lot of money has been spent in these players. And then it's about how do you even get them out the door if that's the approach that manager wants to go down. I mean, we're still got players sitting there such as Rabbi Matondo from Gio. It's signed Rabbi Matondo, if I'm right in saying that. So it's and it's an amalgamation of all these kind of feelings that leaves a squad that ends up being kind of mismatch of different managers and different ideologues and all sorts of things. So it's a big job, that I will say for sure.
Yeah, listen, I mean, we spent the numbers are up there about around about the 30 million mark, just over it. I know the net was a lot lower because we got some good money in for some of the guys that went out, Agamani and Jeffy, for example. But 30 million in the Scottish League is a hell of a lot of money. So it's not as if you could. I don't foresee it even being. I don't even see the potential is there for like if a new manager comes in and says none of these players fit what I'm wanting to do. That it's not as if in January we can go and spend another 30 million, right? So I think that whoever they're bringing in, whatever, and again, this word philosophy is, I suppose it's become a word that has become a bit notorious with Martin at this point. So I think it's why it drives me a bit nuts to keep talking about it. But it is the best way to describe it. If the club has incorporated a club philosophy to hire these players, they're going to have to make sure this manager is up to the task. And if that means that they want to go back, they still want a manager to play the same way that Martin did. I mean, that's a massive concern of mine. But again, I go back to Felwell. Felwell said that they wanted a certain type of manager to play a certain type of way. If this next manager wants to also play the same way as Martin, then there's immediate concerns from me. But obviously, another manager might be a bit more organised and be a bit more structured, but still try and achieve the same style of football that Felwell and co were looking to incorporate when they hired Martin in the first place. But it's the players for me is a big factor in who they bring in next. I don't know what the answer is, but I just don't see it being on the cards that we're going to tear up the script when it comes to the players we've brought in. So
yeah, just on that as well, like there would be a concern if, like you said, they want to play this certain type of football and this style of football. There would be like red flags. But even if another manager does come in and does have that, those ideas or philosophy, then at least they could organize the team better structurally, like in terms of the defense, in terms of,
Yeah.
for me, that was like, albeit football was like watching paint dry, and there was nothing going forward. But for me, the most galling thing was how how easy Rangers were to just play through.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can call it playing through, because there wasn't really any difficulty for any opponent to get ahead and get shots at goal. So, I mean, there was just nothing there previously, and yeah, it would be a concern if they want that same style, because again, if we go to Ibrox, full house, and the ball's being passed between two centre halves, it is not going to go down well at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a way to achieve the style that I think fell well. Well, I hope this is the kind of style that fell well was envisioning before they ended up getting what they got with Martin. But you even look at McGlynn last night, the football that he played against us. You don't. It doesn't have to be. It can still be possession based, but McGlynn was utilising his wingers way better than we did. His defence was much more organised. And I'm not advocating for McGlynn as that manager, by the way, just to be clear there. But he would do a hell of a lot better job than Martin did. But I'm more emphasising the fact that you can play a certain type of football and be organised and work with the players that you've got a lot better than what Martin did. So, well, I mean, time will tell. We'll see how that pans out. But yeah, let's talk about the next manager. I mean, I made a joke last night, and the one thing that Martin had achieved in his time here was to unite the fans, and in the space of about an hour last night, all I could see was the fans arguing about who the next manager will be. So, normal services have resumed, and we're all at loggerheads about who it should be, but. Yeah, I mean, let's quickly. I don't know how much to put into this, but I'll give the top five manager odds. Stevie G 5-2, Sean Dyche 7-2, Danny Rowe 11-2, Muscat 61, McInnes 8-1. Right, and it's almost like a carbon copy of the odds from managers just before Martin was signed. So how much can you put into the bookies odds? I've no idea. It does look a bit lazy to me that we're seeing the same old candidates over and over again from the last time round. But yeah, I don't know. Any of those names stick out to you, Jack? Anyone that's or have you got someone else in mind?
And as I said to you before we came on, I am struggling at the minute in terms of who I would want. I think if I was pushed to pick one from there, and we could, realistically. So look, for example, if you look at Derek McInnes, I don't see him leaving Hearts.
Yeah.
And even if he wanted to, I think Hearts would be notoriously difficult to deal with. So I'll take him out of the equation straight away. Danny Rowe is one that I've seen bandied about quite a lot. My concerns with Danny Rowe are the fact that there's this philosophy style coach that, again, that's not going to get the time here. And whether it works or not, I do not know. Like, I could be completely wrong. If it was someone like Danny Rowe, he could come in and do a fantastic job. But that's the immediate concerns for me. Then you look at Sean Dyche. Could have a team organised, but I don't feel that it'd be suited to the kind of football that Rangers fans would want to see. I think he's very effective and, being hard to beat, being direct and playing on the counter. I don't see it being like a ball dominant team. So then I'm really down to getting to people like Steven Gerrard. No, I'm not advocating and shouting from rooftops that it should be Steven Gerrard, but on the basis of the people that realistically could get from that list, at least he understands the league and at least he understands the size of the football club. I think that's one thing I'm always say for Gerrard when he came here is that he just got it in terms of the club culture and club identity. So yeah, if I was forced to pick one from that list, I would go for Gerrard, but I am very, very open to hearing all manner of debates and choices and seeing the fan base go back to, as you said, normal service resumed?
Yeah, I'll be honest. Like, the Danny Rowe one is interesting, right? Because I think that he gets a lot of notoriety because he's out of the Jurgen Klopp. What I mean, what's is it a philosophy? But it's what the rock and roll of football, or whatever it is they call
heavy
it.
metal football, they call it.
Heavy metal, is it? Yeah, a rock and roll of football. So I don't. Yeah, I'm leaning more towards. First and foremost, I don't think it's going to be any of them. I think you're right. I think McInnes is tied up, but I think he's fairly interested in that project. I would imagine he's getting well backed. They're sitting top of the league. You're looking down at Rangers right now, and you must be thinking, do I really want to go to that basket case? But the potential for other issues that seem to be like we've just spoken about earlier. They seem to be quite evident as well. So does he really want to do that? Muscat, I was all on board with Muscat. He was who I wanted back when we ended up with PC. And by the way, I wasn't unhappy with PC. I actually, his CV looked very impressive when PC came. It's just didn't work out. But Muscat for me at the time, and this is where again, similar to Danny Rowe, Muscat I think was getting a lot of. There was a lot of talk that he was similar to Big Ange, and he was kind of, I don't know if it was they definitely worked together, but I don't know if he was if Ange was like a mentor or something. I think he's they definitely played work together, but I don't think their styles are actually even anything close to each other. So I do think that I personally got lost in the potential that Muscat might be the second coming of Ange, and I'd seen what Ange had done on the other side of Glasgow. So, but now in retrospect, I'm not sure about it at all. He's definitely been very successful out in the Asian markets and over in Australia and things like that. Kind of bombed when he had an opportunity in Europe to play in Belgium. So. Sorry, to manage in Belgium. So yeah, the Sean Dyche one gives me the fear, because this one, based on jobs for the boys approach, worries me. The only thing I would say is I believe Fairwell actually overseen Sean Dyche being removed from his position. So. Is there actually a relationship there? I'm not sure, but they definitely work very closely together for quite a prolonged period. So that one sticks out at me as probably off of the list, the most likely, but probably off of the list that the least that I would like to see at the club, because of, like you mentioned, that the way he plays, I just don't. I can't even bear the thought of watching it. But yeah, Stevie G, he by all reports has not taken the opportunity the last time. I think it's been well documented that he's still living out in the Middle East. Certainly his wife and kids are living out there. And there is concerns that his family want to come back to the UK. Never mind them going back home to England. Coming back up to lovely Scotland. I don't even know if when Stevie G was managing up here, did his family ever actually move up with him? I don't think they did. So, is that a hurdle that Stevie G can get over? Do I think he would want to come back? I think he probably does, but it does seem that there's some family issues there that might stand in the way of it. So, do I want Stevie G back? I personally don't believe we'll get the same manager this time around. I cannot imagine that the period that he spent at Villa and over in the Middle East hasn't. I don't know if it's would it have sucked the life out of him as a manager? I'm not sure, but I don't imagine that he did the same fire in his belly coming back to Rangers this time around as he did the first time. I'm convinced that he thought that Rangers was a stepping stone. I mean, he obviously loved the club, and he did well. Well, he won 1 trophy out of 9 in 3 years, but he won the big one, and that's the one that mattered, right? So, I'm convinced that he had that fire in his belly to come up and prove himself, because his longer term goal was that Liverpool job, and that is never happening now by the looks of it, right? So I'm just not convinced we'll get the same guy, and that's where my major concern there is with him. So yeah, I don't think it will be any of them. Dyche is probably the most obvious one, just based on that farewell connection, but I don't think it will be any of them. Who do I want? I want a winner that's pragmatic. That's all I'm looking at. If we can find somebody that is experienced with the Scottish League, that list is very short. If at all, McInnes is the obvious one, and that we've just covered that. But I swear to God, if we end up with another ideologue at this club, I just, it doesn't work. There's too many. There's too many hurdles in the Scottish game that you have to get over. I mean, and flip-flopping between Europe and some of the teams that you play in the Scottish League, and the way that they defend, and then having to find a formula that also beats the other side of Glasgow as well, is probably Hearts at this point now, and find that balance with Europe. I just I don't know. I don't think that an ideologue is worked out very well for us recently, because I would consider Gio was one. I would consider that Beale was one. Martin was certainly one. You could argue that PC was one as well. And look how that's worked out. So yeah, thoughts?
Well, just on that, I think that's the thing. It's like there are so many, like you said, you go from playing, I don't know, Kilmarnock at Ibrox, on a Sunday, to then go and play a team in the Europa League on a Thursday. And it is going to be that phrase, chalk and cheese. It's,
yeah,
you've got to go almost game by game in terms of, this is how this team's set up. I do think a manager can have some kind of key principles. I think maybe that's like, for example, a certain way they, just as a small example, do they bring the ball out from the back, or do they distribute it quickly, to the winger, or whatever it is? That's fine, but the game is planned based on almost like the opposition in a way, and I think that is important. Now, I'm not saying like you flip everything like 360 every time you come up to a game, but you have to look at it on a game by game basis in terms of it's always going to be different, and then. You kind of dive into that a bit further. You've got teams that, like I said, teams that will sit in that low block, is the term everyone uses nowadays. And then you've got, teams like Hearts and like Hibs, etc., who will maybe come out and have more of a go. And then obviously you've got the other side of Glasgow, where it's going to be more of an even contest, and you maybe have to be more wary about your back line and your defence, and look at that team and how they can also hurt you, but how can you hurt them? So I don't think an ideologue, it just doesn't work in the vast majority of the potential appointments. You look at people talk about like Ange, for example, and his football did work in that regard, but I can't really think of many more who have have come in with a certain idea and style that and they've been so dogmatic with it that it's been successful.
Yeah, I mean, how far do you want to go back as well? PLG, ideologue, Pedro, ideologue. I mean, absolutely. I mean, and Martin has blown those two guys out of the water with his tenure. So congratulations on that one, Martin. But and then go back to Dick Advocat was a well-known pragmatist. Walter Smith was definitely a pragmatist. McLeish was definitely a pragmatist. So I just think there's plenty of evidence there to suggest that these rigid ideologues are just not for us. Does it, like you said, does it mean that they can't have a style of play? Of course not. I mean, that's fine. And you referenced Big Ange there, who definitely had a certain style of play. And but yeah, we don't struggle. A lot of people would think that the Scottish League is a Mickey Mouse league, if you want, right? And this is what really frustrates me when they bring these players up from the Championship down south and stuff like that. The teams in our league, when they come up against us, are very organised, very organised. And you need to find ways to get through that. And you know, if you're just set in your ways and you're not willing to improvise based on the opposition in front of you, I just don't think it works. I think you'll win more games than you don't, unless you're Martin. But yeah, it's it just there's just so much evidence there. So I don't want to, until we're further on in the process, I don't want to give a candidate. In fact, I will. I would like McInnes, but I just don't think it's. I don't think it's feasible. So until we're a bit further down the process, I'd like to see what names do materialise, and then make a call from there, because I just think that this list is probably nonsense at this point. You know, less than 24 hours after the decision's been made, we've already got a top five, and every fan has their opinion, and they're entitled to it. And I respect all the conversations I've been having and the different reasons why people think one guy is better than the other, and it's good to have that debate. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting period of time. I just hope they don't prolong it too long this time, because this they really should have seen this coming, and I hope that they were at least building out a kind of remit of what coaches would be available to them based on the cost of it, based on the philosophy, whatever you like. I hope that they've been doing some pre-work on this, and they're not just getting started now, because this was clearly on the cards for weeks now, so at least weeks. Yeah, I don't know, Jack, if you've got anything else, but yeah, there we go. I'll talk for nearly 40 minutes on this. Apologies again for those little technical difficulties at the start there, but yeah, anything else, Jack?
I think just for me, like you said, in terms of they should have been working on this, because it was, as clear as day that this was the only way it was going to end. I think for me, it's really important that they realise, the mistakes and missteps they've taken, and also to listen to the fan base, but just almost respect it a bit more in terms of, what we are as a club. I think that's really, really important, because if they can understand that, then that should also help them, plan better, shall I say.
Yeah, you mentioned it the other day that this is an institution. This is more than a business. They need to get their shit together on this, and they need to get this appointment spot on, and it needs to have the backing of the fans as well, because Martin certainly didn't, and I think there was a lot of people that were just waiting for that to go wrong, and rightly so, because I'm not waiting for it, but they already knew what was. The writing was on the wall before it had even materialized, you know what I mean? So they need to get this one spot on. But yeah. I will close with one thing. And this won't be popular, but this is my my perspective on Russell Martin. I don't believe for 1 second that Russell Martin came to our club with any ill intentions. I believe that Russell Martin, in his maybe somewhat deluded state towards his managerial abilities, believed that he was the right man for this job and that he could bring success to Rangers. So, and I do hold, as I've mentioned, I hold the guys that put Russell Martin in that position to account as well. So I just wanted to close on this. I am not a fan of Russell Martin. I am delighted that he has left the club, but I do wish Russell Martin all the best in his future endeavours, because regardless of how that things have transpired, I don't believe there was ever any ill intention on his part for this to go the way it has. And regardless of what I think about him as a person and some of the conferences that I've covered and my opinions on him, it should never be personal. And he's failed as a manager, and we move on to the next one. And there should be. I hope there's not as much ill feeling towards Martin as there has been materialising, justifiably or not. Personally, I just wish Russell Martin all the best in his future endeavours, and that's it. So don't know if you've got anything to add there, Jack, and I don't expect you to, because I know a lot of people will not share that same sentiment. But that's how I feel.
Yeah, no, I as I said, I wouldn't wish any ill on somebody, and I do really truly agree with the sentiment that he came up here to do his best. But that is football, and sometimes it just doesn't work out. I wish him all the best in that sense. But absolutely delighted that the Russell Martin chapter is over.
Absolutely. Right. Exciting times, I suppose. Again, hopefully this doesn't get strung out. But there's going to be a lot to cover in the coming weeks. And looking forward to it. Looking forward to better times ahead. But until next time, all, thank you very much for tuning in. My name is Chris. Thank you, Jack, very much. Bold and Blue 1872. If you could like and subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. All the support the channel's been getting has been overwhelming. So thank you very much. Until next time, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
We are gold and blue, born in 1872, the greatest team in the world. We are known as we follow on. We are the people through and through, the gold and blue since 1872. With our hearts on fire, we rise to the call. Through the highs and lows, we'll never fall. Glasgow Rangers standing proud and true. Together we sing for the gold